Hey, so it's Try to Work Brain Dump time. Last week, Beth and I went to week 1 of Explore God, and then yesterday we went to week 2. This is Explore God discussion group. It's 350 plus churches in Austin that are participating in it, and we were invited to go to one of the discussion groups. And this week's discussion was on, does God exist? And so I definitely wanted to make sure I was there. The videos, if you go to exploregod.com, I think all the videos are up there. And this started with a video at the outset that had people saying, yes, I believe in God, no, I don't believe in God, or here's why I believe in God, or why I don't believe in God. Or and then we had our discussion, and then it ends with another video with people offering things. With theologians and ministers offering their answers to this question of does God exist. There was a statistic that they showed wherein the number of people who answered yes to do you believe in God dropped 10, 11, 12, 13%, something like that, over the span of the last 10, 15, 20 years. I forget the actual number, but it was a massive drop. And so we actually started the conversation not with a discussion of whether or not God exists, but with a discussion of why has the number of believers dropped so rapidly, so quickly. And there were people who, pointed out the hypocrisy of the church, pedophile priests, an increase in legalism and other doctrinal disputes. Maybe the church is too narrow, which, by the way, is the subject of next week's discussion, which I will miss. And I was asked what I thought, and I said that I thought it was the internet. Because in that time frame, the internet has taken off. More and more people are getting access, and it provides people with easy access to information. Much easier to do research now than it was back when you had to go to a library. It also connects people, so that in the past, where people would be all alone with nobody to talk to, and perhaps continue to profess belief or pretend to believe, now they have other people that they can interact with. It's also brought to light the atheist and secular communities as they've grown, so that fewer people are able to say, oh, I don't know an atheist, I don't know anything about an atheist. To me, the internet has been, atheists run the internet. And it's the reason that we are growing by leaps and bounds. There were a number of other ideas offered, and then we kind of I was asked about how I got to where I am, and I was also asked about, morality, and then we got derailed by somebody who was sitting behind me and was saying, so wait, you guys believe in the Big Bang and evolution, like bang and everything was just there? To which somebody else in the room chuckled. And the other atheist in the room, said yes and explained some science stuff. And then I mentioned that I thought we'd been a little bit derailed from the topic that we were supposed to be on. And I gave a little quick dissertation about secular moral systems. There were people who offered up their personal revelation, their personal experience. Somebody heard a big, loud, booming, audible voice talking to them, and that was one of the reasons why they believed. And I as I mentioned to several people afterwards, I can't prove that didn't happen, or that it didn't happen the way he recalls it, or offer them some explanation other than God that I'm sure about. I can say I don't see any reason to believe that it's a God, and that I think it's far more plausible that this was a delusion created by his mind. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's mentally ill or whatever else, but, at best we can say we don't know. And if that's the best we can do, then his claim that it's definitely God, that he knew it was God, is one he can't substantiate at all. I talked to another guy at the end of it, and he's like, but I've seen, God's done so many things, it's just undeniable. Well, how do you know it was God doing this? Well, I just know. Okay. But, could you be wrong? We all believe things that are false, and we believe things for bad reasons. You can't seem to offer me any good reasons, so could it be that you are believing something for bad reasons, and you could be wrong? It was one of those moments that some of you may be familiar with, where he adopted an intellectual pose long enough to say, well, yes, I could be wrong, but was very clear that he couldn't actually be wrong. It reminds me a little bit of another part of the discussion that came up where we talked about, everything's possible, when in fact we acknowledge that some things aren't impossible. Square circles aren't possible. But the video at the end of it made me sad, because it included, first of all, the only time atheism was actually mentioned was in the video where they said atheistic communism, which is just pathetic, really. Trying to link those two, that's how we got the McCarthy-era crap that resulted in plastering "In God We Trust" on the money and "Under God in a Pledge," and just a big old witch hunt for non-believers and communists in particular. But the other thing was, there were several times in the video and in the discussion where this idea that without God you can have no meaning or purpose, no morals, and no love. All three of which are entirely false and absurd. The type of meaning and purpose that they talk about having is something that they would object to in any other context. If it's like having the government tell you what job you're going to have when you grow up. That sort of externally imposed meaning or purpose to your life. This is what your life is going to be. Is something that they would that's a government we'd overthrow. That is something they would object to. And yet somehow when a God says to them, or they're convinced that a God says, oh, here's your meaning and purpose. Thank you. I've been looking for this meaning and purpose, and thank you so much for telling me what it was. I've told college students it's like having somebody else pick your major for you. We hear these terrible stories about parents who are, you will be a doctor and you will go to med school, when somebody's heart wants to be an artist, or an engineer, or anything other than the path that somebody else has chosen for them. The sort of externally imposed meaning and purposes, it's horrible. It's not what we would want. I suppose it could be true, but it's also something that we can reject. Even if there was a God who is giving us some externally imposed meaning and purpose, we can still say, you know what, screw you. My life is going to have whatever meaning and purpose I give it. I'm going to be the captain of my ship and steer myself to my own destiny as best I can. The morality issue I've covered over and over again. You can Google superiority of secular morality, and find a couple different versions of talks that I've given on that subject. The primary point is that Christianity doesn't offer a moral system; it offers moral pronouncements. And if the point that I didn't make last night was that for those who think that you have to have God for morality, how on earth did you figure out what God thinks about morality? We can't go with the Bible. The Bible advocates things like slavery, which we reject as immoral. So we have already, as a society, used our brains to determine that some of the things the Bible has to say about morality are wrong. And even if we were to determine that some of the things the Bible says about morality are correct, and I think they are, what we've done there is we've used our brain. Oh, well, God has written it on our heart, what's moral and not. You know, he's written it on everybody's heart, Romans 1. Well, okay, congratulations. How did you determine that God was the good one and Satan was the evil one again? You had to use your own understanding. And if God wrote it on your heart, couldn't it be that maybe he's the evil one and wrote his code on your heart, and then so you'd find him good? Or why is it if God specifically or supposedly wrote right and wrong onto our heart, why is it that we have so much disagreement about right and wrong, including from people who profess to believe in God? And we still teach our children what we've learned. Kids aren't born knowing right and wrong. They're born with the ability to understand these things. And the last one, that without God you can't have love because God is love. It's sad. It tells me that they're looking around, seeing these non-believers as sad, meaningless, purposeless, immoral, unloving, incapable of love beings that are in desperate need of God. And I know that that's what they think because that's what I used to think, and I hear it all the time. And it's ridiculous. It's just not even hardly worth addressing. But the last thing, which I want to hit before I head into work, is after all this was said and done, somebody mentioned that one of the things they hadn't heard as far as why they believe in God is a discussion of the Bible. Now, in 2 weeks, we're going to be having a discussion about, is the Bible reliable? And I will be there for that. And because of this comment from last night, I will be loaded for bear with actual factual information. Because what I heard last night was, it was all I could do to sit still and keep my mouth shut. Because I'd already spoken more than enough for a big discussion group. And it was just about over, and the last thing I wanted to do was stand up and tell one of them, I'm sorry, but everything that she just said is factually false. Everything. Because what she said was that, we've now got the originals for all or nearly all of the books of the Bible, which is false. We have originals for exactly 0 books of the Bible. There are no original manuscripts, no original autographs for any book of the Bible. When you go to the New Testament, the earliest complete manuscripts are centuries after the events. There are partial manuscripts to just within a century, barely. She mentioned the Dead Sea Scrolls, and she did so in a way that demonstrates that she doesn't really know anything about the Dead Sea Scrolls, because she implied that the Dead Sea Scrolls provided us an original copy of every book of the Bible, or almost all of them. And I'll do another video on this later, because this is already long, and we're going to be discussing it in 2 weeks. But this is the type of thing that I used to believe, that lots of Christians believe. It's because of apologists like Josh McDowell and others, and ministers who don't know. And these are Christian urban legends, which are also being passed around on the internet. The internet's not just a bastion of good, just in case you were confused. And so, I don't really blame her too much. She got information. She got information from sources she trusted, probably several of them. She'd heard it over and over again. She said there's thousands of documents, and this about made me jump out of my chair. Thousands of documents, which I don't have the information for you, but it's out there, have actually confirmed that everything in the Bible is true. Literally, that's what she said. That there are thousands of documents out there that confirm that everything in the Bible is true. And as a heads up, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be starting at Genesis and working my way to Jesus, to show that not only was her statement not true, but that the Bible is in fact not reliable. Now, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. Doesn't mean there's not a God. Doesn't mean that somebody's faith can't be justified. But this nonsense about the Bible has got to stop. And I thought this same thing, by the way, while I was still a believer. Because what you've done is you have built somebody's house upon the sand. If somebody's Christianity has as the foundation the idea that we have original copies of the Bible, that the Bible has been confirmed by scientific investigation, by historical investigation, to be absolutely 100% true, and that is the foundation for their belief, the second they find out that those things are false, their belief should crumble. And if in fact these claims are true, if in fact the Christian God exists, you've done them a huge disservice by allowing them to build their belief on that shaky, crumbly foundation. You've made it easy for them to be led astray. It's a shameful practice, and what I hear from people who've been to seminary is that they learn these things in seminary. They learn the truth about the Bible, and that it is recommended that they not discuss this with parishioners, with their congregants, because they're not ready for it, because the truth would be too potentially damaging to their faith, and that they shouldn't exaggerate the claims about the Bible, but they also shouldn't clarify and offer the truth about how unreliable it is. It's one of the reasons why I'm not very fond of seminaries. Jeff details the story of his parents, both of whom were ministers, both of whom had gone to seminary and been at seminary, not cemetery, and been educated, how they said that of course they knew the things that Jeff was talking about, but they didn't tell the people in the pews because those people just weren't capable of handling it. That is one of the most condescending things I think I've ever heard. And what's interesting is that they knew the truth, they believed it anyway, and yet they were willing to use either a lie or a lie of omission to encourage others to believe as well. So that's Explore God Week 2. Still had a good time, enjoyed the people that were there. Were very kind of frustrating the way the conversation spread out. An hour is not enough time to cover this. Hell, I've spent almost 18 minutes just telling you about it. See you later.